Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hyperconscious Podcast. Alan, what is hyperconscious?
Once you understand why something is the way that it is, now you have the power to change it. Great conversations with great people and great questions are the keys to the kingdom of unlocking your consciousness.
Every single action that you do starts as a thought. When you control the way you think, you will control the way you act, and you will control the way you live. That is hyperconscious. Ladies and gentlemen, the Hyperconscious Podcast is proudly sponsored by our friend and mentor, David Meltzer of the Playbook Podcast. He was kind enough to join us on episode 144 and 135.
Folks, it has become Kevin and I's mission in life to help you realize that the life of your dreams is right on the other side of you becoming the greatest version of yourself. Let us help you do that.
I rarely do these things twice in such a short amount of time, but you guys impress me. I believe in people that provide value and of our service. You two guys are on your way to huge fulfillment, purpose, and profitability, and I look forward to helping you both.
We appreciate that more than you know. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode where we sat down and did a small talks episode on judgment and how to kind of walk that fine line, especially when it comes to people. Today, for episode number 253, we are going to do a Scratching the Surface episode 253.
I know, man.
My
Crazy.
Lord.
Crazy.
Scratching the surface on optimism versus realism, and we'll talk about how it affects decision-making.
So, shout out to Emilia, who I care for dearly. Thank you, sweetheart, for this episode. Before we jump into optimism versus realism and how that affects your decision-making paradigm, I want you to first go to the hyperconsciouspodcast.com.
You could.
And if you look at the top of the page, it's going to say hashtag join.
It will.
Or no?
No.
It's going to say
Nope.
join, hashtag hyperconscious nation.
Butchered it.
And then you're going to be entered into our private Facebook group. You're going to be prompted with 3 questions about courage and confidence and different life things. Folks, being a part of a community that supports your goals and dreams, your uniqueness is everything. Make sure you join.
And if you find yourself, depending on what side, like optimism versus realism, well, sometimes realism can be pessimism. If you find yourself on the side of pessimism, you might need a coach to help keep you accountable when it comes to fear chasing and your habits. Alan and I both have a couple spots remaining for peak performance coaching, fitness/business on Alan's side, and then just mindset and podcasting on my side as well, if you're looking for that.
Remember, your coach doesn't have the limiting beliefs you have, and from the outside perspective, they can see where your limiting beliefs
judge
are.
you.
Exactly.
No judgment.
See what he did there?
Wow. All right. So let's talk about it. Let's do it. Let's talk about it. Hey, let's do it. Let's just talk about it then.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I think this has a lot to do with the drive to 5, man.
Okay.
Because I tend to be on the optimistic side. So every time Kevin and I go into a new endeavor, I can't even tell you how many times behind the scenes we've been like, okay, man.
Every time.
Everything always goes worse than I thought it would, and always goes better than he thought it would, for the most part.
Well, for the most part, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So how does this have to do with Drive to 5 from your perspective, and which end do you think is important in which scenario?
So the one thing that I connect optimism in realism/pessimism, depending on how you're doing it, and the Drive to 5 is I always used to say that I thought I got lucky.
Right.
It's hard to be optimistic when you feel like you're getting lucky. You kind of are pessimistic because you're assuming the worst, but you're being pleasantly surprised. So I think optimism, I don't know how you get it. I don't know. When I say a realist, I think of logic.
Practicality.
Yeah, a lot of times. It's like, why would that happen that way? It would never happen that way. It doesn't work that way. Sometimes it actually does work that way,
Right.
but it's not always logic. And I don't know. How do you think you get optimism?
Self-belief. So I think optimism builds over time because when you... So, okay, back in high school, if Kevin got an A on a test, he thought it was because he got lucky.
Not always with that.
Okay.
No. Like, I want people to understand that, like, I wasn't... I don't want to give them the wrong. Like I wasn't.
Let's say you
dumb.
got an A. How did you feel after?
I used to get A's all the time.
Right.
Yeah, I wasn't. No, school wasn't that bad. This was more like when I passed my personal trainer test.
Right.
I thought I got lucky because only 60% of people passed the first time or something.
So for me, I would have thought that it was because I am smart.
Right. Smart.
And the truth is somewhere in the middle, which is, yeah, I'm smart, but I also prepared. And you passed because you prepared and because you're smart.
I prepared.
It all comes down to belief.
And perception.
So, like, if you decide in advance that you want to pass your personal trainer's exam and then you do it, you should become more optimistic, technically. The problem is if you do that enough times, eventually you become arrogant, and then you assume you win by default, so you stop doing the prep work. So I think there's pros and cons to each. The pros of being an optimist, they've done studies about this. Optimists are 4 times less likely to predict outcomes accurately, which is why you and I are such a good team, because I'll think everything's going to be amazing, and then usually, okay, so Top Notch Live, we're trying to get incredible speakers,
Yes.
and a lot of them are going to volunteer their time for us. I tend to think that we're going to be able to get better speakers than we thought, and you end up being right, but there's also some things that you didn't think would happen that end up happening.
Right.
So on the optimism side, to go back to the study, they found out that optimists are 4 times less likely to predict outcomes accurately. But they always try because they think it's going to work out. Therefore, they fail more, and every failed experiment is one step closer to success. So optimists get better results in the long run because they try more, learn more lessons, and eventually get success. But realists are still better at predicting the outcomes along the way, which is why I think you and I are such a good team.
So that's the other connection to the drive to 5. Whether you're a 0 or a 10, you need action.
Yes.
And this is what both of these are. So
Right.
these are precursors to actions or decision making. Realistically is what they are. You're optimistic about an outcome. You're optimistic about your luck. You're optimistic about a relationship, whatever,
Right.
whatever it is. Either way, you have to take action because maybe if you're an optimist, you'll be humbled.
Yep.
If you're a realist and you assume it's not going to go well, you'll gain belief.
Right.
There's another connection.
Action is the cure-all.
It is.
Action will drive you to 5.
As long as you know where you are, because if you don't know how to react. Like when something goes bad for you, you don't get insecure about it
Right.
because you know you need the feedback. You need the pain.
Yeah.
When things go bad for me and I'm not feeling so hot, I'm not at a 5, I'm at a 1. I have to understand that, like, but you did it. Like, that is the win. The win is that although you didn't know how it would go, you did it. Like,
Right.
realistically, I was not very optimistic for my first speech. How well could this possibly go? I've never done this before.
I think you killed it.
I know, I do too. I genuinely think I did a great job, and I
Right.
appreciate all the support and everybody saying that. But it's hard to be optimistic when you have no information to back it up with.
Right. No evidence.
Yeah, man. And evidence creates confidence.
Yes, it does.
So it's, I don't want to say pessimism because I don't think that I'm pessimistic.
What if you did poorly at your first speech? What would have happened?
Everything would have burned to the ground and I'd be doing something else right now. I don't know. No, I don't mean that.
Okay. Well,
Hey, maybe.
right. So, real talk. Confident Woman Consortium.
Yes.
You killed it.
Thank you.
You over prepped. I under prepped.
Yes.
Right. We both did a good job. I think from the audience perspective, everyone who attended seemed to really enjoy that. Okay. You and I both want to be world-class speakers.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you did a poor job and it didn't go well and you didn't get an applause. What happens to you? And like, how do you work through that as a realist?
Now, the thing is, I am paired with an optimist, a serial optimist. So I have a different input than a lot of people. So the question I was going to say is, if I did badly, would your opinion of my trajectory change?
No.
Right.
No, you'd actually be better off in the long run.
See, so I don't know because I know you would set me straight. If I was alone, it would be hard. I know a lot more now, and I really, really, really really locked in fail forward.
Right.
Like that's something behind the scenes, we're always failing.
Always.
Like
Every time.
We literally
Right.
have a competition for who on the team can get the most failures. They get a $100 gift card.
Yeah.
Now,
Amy won in
I don't
October.
want to win it because I'm not going to get any money. I'm going to have to pay myself.
Right.
Doesn't work that way.
Well, technically you get $50 from the kid.
Oh, yeah, right. Just what I need.
Now he's going to win it.
But But so that's a huge thing for us. We're always talking about
Yeah. So
failing.
you did 3 cold calls yesterday.
Yeah.
Did you get rejected?
No.
Okay.
So 2 people didn't answer the phone, and then one I got
Well, that doesn't count as a
right,
rejection.
and then one I got not the assistant, but whoever was taking the calls.
That's a win.
It is. But I think that if you want to be realistic, if you consider yourself a realist, then say this. So as an example, well, here we go.
No. Keep going. I'll hold it.
Just throwback. Who remember we were on the phone with somebody and you said if you need to go to the bathroom during the rep, don't worry, we'll hold it.
Yeah.
Who was that?
I don't remember.
It might have been Lori.
I remember
It might have been
foot
Lori Harder.
in mouth.
It might have been
Oh
Lori
my
Harder.
God.
So I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, if you consider yourself a realist, then that's fine. But admit to yourself that realistically, this actually could go better than I expected.
Right.
So instead of saying what is the worst that could happen, realistically, what is the best that could happen?
Right.
That's a shift that I've made. So as Alan was saying, we created a list of 55 to 60 colleges that we're going to send emails to try to get speeches there, okay?
Right. And or calls.
And or calls. Some of them have the numbers to the heads of those departments. So yesterday I said, screw it. I'm going to make a couple calls. I'm going to hit the streets. See what
man.
I can do.
Sales.
Now, as I put the number in, my finger was hovering over the call button, and I'm thinking, oh, my God, this could be brutal.
Right.
And then I literally said to myself, but what's the worst that could happen?
Right.
I make a fool of myself, and I never talk to this person again.
Exactly.
It's not the end of the world. And then I hammered it.
Right.
My realism, my realistic side, the realist in me, had to talk to the person that was afraid. Like, I was a pessimist, and then I think realism is actually good because it's one step ahead of pessimism.
Is realism the drive to 5 and pessimism 0?
I just licked the microphone by
I
accident.
I think
I don't know because your realism, your optimism almost never takes fear into account. I think realism balances fear
and confidence.
and confidence.
Right.
So your realism is only as good as your confidence and your experience. Where your optimism, you can be like overly optimistic
And delusional.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if you can be a delusional realist.
I had a major breakthrough when you were talking. I think we should be overly optimistic on the macro and overly realistic on the micro, which is why you and I are such a good team.
Interesting.
On the macro, I'm so freaking optimistic. Like, I really think, like, no matter how many times we fail, eventually we will win. Period.
What that does is builds.
But yeah, maybe not, because then you're willing to.
Right. Then you're not going to take shots short term?
No, you take as many shots short term as it take.
But that's not
But you need to
realism.
prep in the micro. So like you over prep. So for Mass Maritime, like I was doing my speech in the car.
Well, because to me, so the realist in me, your speech will only be your performance in anything will only be as good as your prep work.
But my perception of prep work is the last decade rather than the 10 hours
Right.
before.
See, mine's not.
Right.
But then again, I've never been macro associated, so maybe that's why.
Right.
To me, it's
But with
it's,
podcasting, it kind of is. Because remember when I was asking you questions during all the episodes, you were like, well, I want to be able to do Q&As like Dave can.
True.
So it's interesting how you have that with podcasting, but I have that with speaking. And sometimes your prep work with podcasting is lower because you feel competent. So I think you're an optimist in podcasting. You've become one, truly.
But then again, we've had times where it's like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I think I'm a realist. We've had times where we're in the studio getting ready to dial the phone on somebody, and we both are like, nah, I don't feel this.
Right.
If I was optimistic, I would probably say, yeah, well, I'm sure we can turn this into something. But I think the realist in me is like, I don't even want to do this.
But is that because you don't believe you can or because you don't think it's congruent?
I think it's because I don't want to.
Right. It's not
that I don't believe I can. Yeah, that's true.
Right.
This is such an interesting thing.
Right.
Because you might be an optimist in something and a realist in something else.
It all comes down to self-awareness. Where are you optimistic in your life? For the listeners right now. Ready? Let's do this for Kevin. Where are you overly optimistic?
Overly? Probably my relationship.
Really? You think that's overly?
I mean, I'm the most optimistic in that. I don't know. I don't know what is overly.
Overly would be you're not doing the little things that make the biggest difference because you think you're going to win by default.
Okay. No.
Oh, maybe we shouldn't even talk about overly. Optimism is a good thing.
Right.
When it's balanced with practicality.
Then I don't know.
Right.
Because I'm doing the prep work and everything I can. And could I do more? Of course.
Okay, back in the gym, back before you did mobility. And you were, I remember being in the gym with Kevin and we put on the video camera and he literally did shoulder press on the Smith machine with 2 plates on each side. And
Didn't even warm up. I was doing arms that
Yeah,
day, I
it didn't
think.
even warm up.
Not a good idea.
That was probably being overly optimistic about your abilities.
I think that was ego. The video camera's on. I got to look good, man.
Yeah.
That was what that was. I don't think there was any optimism. I didn't know how many times I think it was the first time I ever did that weight.
Dude, you hammered it for like 12.
Yeah, I got a good
I was
set.
blown
I
away.
got a good set, but it hurt me badly. I don't know. I genuinely don't. I don't think I'm overly optimistic. I don't think I'm a like a general optimist. I don't think that's where I sit.
I definitely am.
Right.
I was overly optimistic about my ability to be athletic, and I got injured. So because I was overly optimistic with my own athleticism, I legitimately got injured because I wasn't doing mobility. Realists do more prep work because they don't believe in themselves as much. Optimists always try because they always assume it's going to go well.
What if you can merge them?
Right. That's the drive to 5.
Interesting.
Got to merge them. You got to merge them.
So-
You got to understand where you're at.
I'm going to say something bold. Not
Wow.
really.
Fortune favors the bold.
I feel like I'm in a better position. When it comes to us, I feel like you add more value to me than I add to you.
Why?
Because you make me do it and I over-prepare. Where you're going to do it anyway and my over-preparation...
Yeah, but that rubs off on me.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think I really do think we're the perfect team.
Because I'm doing it anyway. I have to do it.
Dude.
If I want to be on this team,
Right.
the next time we have an opportunity for a speech, I can't be like, you know what, man, I don't really think I want to do that this time.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
Well, exactly.
But for you would just show up anyway.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So I don't know.
But I think
I'm in the position, I think.
it's interesting. This is becoming very contemplative.
I like it.
I am very motivated by failure.
I'm motivated by fear of failure.
Right.
When I fail, it motivates me, but I don't ever fall back on that and say like, well, if I fail, at least it'll motivate me more. No. Let's do well, and that'll motivate you better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
This is fire.
So if the people listening to us haven't turned this off yet because we're going super deep on very specific things, which I love. That is what hyperconscious is. This is the conversations we have.
Breakthroughs.
But what value can we add to them if they're in a unique situation? If they find themselves as optimists, speak to them because that's where you are.
Okay. If you are an optimist, here is the upside. You will always try. You most likely have a lot of self-belief in your own ability to manifest your imagination into reality. You most likely have courage and confidence and exude that and will attract other people who feel like they need that. But the downside is you usually under-prep, you usually over-fail, and you're going to get hurt a lot more than the realist. But you're also going to learn way more because what hurts sticks, and what sticks is a lesson. So every failed experiment is one step closer to success. Optimists always win in the long run, truly. And that's like everything I've studied about the human condition. Optimists always win. So if you're a not optimist, what would you tell them?
Well, so I think, you know what I would say? I would say get around an optimist.
Right.
If you're a realist, you can think of it this way, man. Like, realistically, what are the chances we can build something that we can man and fly? Like the Wright brothers.
Right.
They had to be the most optimistic.
Right.
Because if they only based things off of what was real,
Right.
they would be trying to build bird wings.
Right.
So I think getting around an optimist is unbelievably important, but also understanding that I think your level of confidence and competence is always going to fall on your level of preparation in the moment.
Wow.
When if I'm fighting somebody, I don't care that I've been training for a long time. I better double down on training and train for the specifics.
Right.
The specifics of this talk, the specifics of this crowd, the specifics of this opponent.
I think the same thing you just said. Okay. Right now, if you're out there right now, I want you to try to figure out with us which side you fall on. It's so obvious to me that I'm on the optimism side, and you've heard Kevin, it's obvious that he's on the realism side.
Oh, yeah.
Look at these teams. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, Paul Allen and Bill Gates, Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. There's always a realist and an optimist. The best teams in the world are optimists and realists. That's so true. Even my Aunt Joan Ann and her business partner talk about this all the time. If you're an optimist, you desperately need to get around a realist. If you're a realist, you desperately need to get around an optimist because one of them has vision that is very, very big and is future-oriented, but the realist has practicality. Like, what do we actually have to do, though, Alan? Like, to be the best speaker in the world, though, like, what do we actually have to do with this speech, though, right here? So it's just the whole is far greater than the sum of the parts. Understand where you fall and what you need. And especially in an intimate relationship, I think it's important to understand where you're at as well.
What would be a good test? Like, if this scenario happened and you felt this way, you're this.
Remember in Florida when we were driving
Yes,
back from Eddie's?
Here we go.
We were listening to, I think, Stained.
Yes.
And I remember you saying, like, wow, this would be really, it was like a longest day ever. Was that after the sled challenge? I think that was after the sled
I don't
challenge.
know. We were
cooked.
5 hours into a 6-hour ride, and it was like 2:30 in the morning, and it was brutal.
We're savages, man. That's
Brutal,
crazy.
yeah. In a rental car, just whipping up the interstate of Florida, where there is just flat road and nothing.
Oh, my goodness. So true. And he
And we
turns
were
to me and he
crying.
says, you know, it would really suck if we didn't turn out to be successful.
Imagine if we did all this for nothing.
Right.
And Alan looked at me and went, "Wait, what?" And I said, "Yeah, you know what I mean. Imagine if we did all this for nothing." He's the guy who quite literally never thought of that. And I was like, "Well, you and I are different people."
Right. What's a good test?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it has to be like a universal test. If I set a basket up and gave you a basketball, if you've never played basketball and I said, how sure are you can make the shot?
Right.
I don't know that somebody who's never played basketball would be optimistic.
Here's a good test. How willing are you to take the shot? Because if you're willing to... Okay, so Michael Jordan. I talked to Tim Grover on Instagram a little while ago. I have a little flashcard about relentless. And Michael Jordan was the most relentless, he said. He wrote a book. It's the whole thing. Tim Grover was Michael Jordan's personal trainer for 15 years. Not a lot of people realize this. Michael Jordan, per time on the floor, took more shots than anyone else.
Yeah.
But yet he was the best basketball player in the world. He was so optimistic about his ability to win, to hit the shot, even though he failed more than anyone else. Just like Reggie Jackson, 2,600 strikeouts, the most in the history of MLB. But people don't remember the strikeouts; they remember the home runs.
Right.
How many chances are you willing to take? If you're willing to take chance after chance after chance after chance, you're most likely optimistic. If you're not willing to take chances, you're probably on the pessimistic side or realistic side, and you need to get around someone who's willing to take more chances.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's a good way to do it. Read your, you got a dramatic reading.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we got like 5 minutes left, so I want to make sure you hammer that out, and then that way we don't go over.
Real good episode.
This was fire. This was very contemplative, transcending.
Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking. So I actually saw this book in Emilia's office, and since she was the one who recommended this, I wanted to...
You stole the book?
No, this is my book as well. But I noticed she has it as well. Okay. Chapter 1, Believe in Yourself. This is Norman Vincent Peale in a book called The Power of Positive Thinking. Believe in yourself, ! Have faith in your abilities. Without a humble but reasonable confidence in your own powers, you cannot be successful or happy. But with sound self-confidence, you can succeed. A sense of inferiority and inadequacy interferes with the attainment of your hopes, but self-confidence leads to self-realization and successful achievement. Because of the importance of this mental attitude, and by the way, optimism, realism, and pessimism are attitudes.
Yeah.
They're just the way you look at and filter life. Okay. Because of the importance of this mental attitude, this book will help you believe in yourself and release your inner powers. It is appalling to realize the number of people who are hampered and made miserable by the malady popularly called the inferiority complex. But you need not suffer from this trouble. When proper steps are taken, it can be overcome. You can develop creative faith in yourself, faith that is justified. And I think Kevin has done that over the last few years by consistent action. After speaking to a convention of businessmen in a city auditorium, I was on the stage greeting people when a man approached me with a particular intensity of manner and asked me, "May I talk with you about a matter of desperate importance to me?" I asked him to remain until the others had gone. Then we went backstage and sat down. "I'm in this town to handle the most important business deal of my life," he explained. "If I succeed, it means everything to me. If I fail, I'm done for." I suggested that he relax a little, that nothing was quite that final. If he succeeded, that was fine. If he didn't, well, tomorrow was another day.
Interesting. As you were reading that, I was going to say, is there any times where being an optimist is bad?
You're going to get hurt more because you're going to try more.
So you'll have more short-term quote-unquote failures.
Yeah.
Where, like, that's the thing. It's like, if Dave Meltzer called us up and said, "Hey, I want you guys to come speak,"
Yeah.
I'm preparing more than I've ever prepared for anything.
So you're less likely to get hurt if you do it.
Well, I would
Optimists will always try, and that's their strength, but they'll underprepare unless they're hyperconscious.
come up with something.
Hammer it.
Optimistic action with realistic preparation.
Oh, that's fire.
You do that, you're unstoppable.
That's why the team.
Right.
We're doing that for each other because we're rubbing off on each other.
We take optimistic action.
Right.
Always.
But with realistic prep.
But with realistic prep. I think the more you prep, the better you're going to be.
In the long run and the short run.
Right. So
Fire.
that's why I'm not addicted to the prep work, trust me. But even like as an example, I was optimistic. So we had an episode, you guys haven't heard it yet. We'll drop that next week with Matt Staver. Matt Staver is an artist, but he has a really incredible story of
so good.
how he got to where he is today through failures and growth.
Oh,
like
yeah.
failures of losing everything and sleeping in his car. But I was optimistic that although he doesn't have a ton of stuff online, we didn't pick up our notebooks once.
No.
It was a genuine conversation with not very little prep work because I did what I could.
Right.
But I was optimistic that the podcast would go as well as we allowed it to.
So well. It was so good.
That's something for me. Like I think maybe I'm more optimistic during podcasts now because I've done it so much.
Right.
But if The Rock, Joe Rogan, I'm going to realistically, it's going to be a ton of prep work.
You need both.
You do. I feel like you do.
Need both.
Yeah. I feel like you do need
Super
both.
salad, always both.
Always both. Yeah, I've heard that about 1,000 times.
Maybe the listeners haven't.
You got it. Yeah, they have. You got anything else?
I think we should do a 10-second blip. Yours was 5.
That's mine.
What was that?
I can't go.
What
back
was it
on
again?
that. I think optimistic action with realistic preparation.
Fire. I don't know if I can beat that.
You can't.
I don't think
You shouldn't even try. You shouldn't even try.
Well, I'm optimistic that I can. If you're an optimist, get around a realist. If you're a realist, get around an optimist. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
I like that. Although it's stolen, the last part. Nobody knows.
Borrowed
Borrowed. That's
by
right.
Stephen Jobs.
Stephen Jobs. Yeah, this was interesting. This was we explored a lot, but I think that is one of the most important takeaways. The only reason I am optimistic in certain ways is because I borrowed your optimism and I used my realistic preparation.
Right.
And now there are certain times where it's like 200, not even 100 episodes ago, I was afraid not to have my notebook. I have 2 pages of notes for every guest we've ever had.
Right.
And one of my intentions was to not have a notebook. I want to do the prep work, but I don't want to rely on the prep work.
Right.
And I think that's another thing too. I want to be so good where I can not just show up, but I can make it look like I just showed up. That's another thing.
When you first started podcasting, did you think you could be world class?
No.
Okay, so for someone out there who doesn't yet believe.
Yeah.
So here's the cool thing.
We got to hammer it.
I know. 20 seconds. Kevin did not believe he could be a world-class podcaster at his first episode.
Yeah.
How did you go from that to believing it?
Reps. The thing is, if you have a podcast right now and you've never spoken or been a podcaster before, you can't have the best podcast in the world right now. You can't.
Right now.
You don't have the talent.
But you could one day.
You could one day.
Right.
How many reps are you willing to put in? Are you willing to put in the necessary reps in order to gain the talent, the skill, the clarity, the networking, the connections, the confidence? Are you willing to put in the reps? If you're willing to put in the reps, more reps or just as many reps as everybody else, why can't you be the best?
Amen.
Why can't you be the best? And it might not even take you the same amount of reps as somebody else.
Right.
But if you base your potential off your current,
right,
you'll never reach your potential.
Right.
Your potential is what it is now.
Right.
So that's the thing.
Fire.
Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Up next, we have an episode with Erica Riesberg. We went deep.
Oh,
we went deep into meditation and manifestation and energy. And she is like, again, I say this a lot. You can feel somebody's energy when you're on the phone with them. And all I felt from her was positivity, and she added a ton of value.
She's all about love. Her podcast is all about love. I actually went on her show and really enjoyed that as well.
All things in the name of love.
Right? It's fire.
Yeah,
fire.
yeah.
Title.
Title.
Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
you're welcome.
So she also talked about healing your inner child. I have personally experienced from Shauna Pelton on stage live forgiving, my 14-year-old self and crying. It was healing, and there's real truth to this stuff.
Yeah.
So please listen to that episode. Erica's awesome.
She helped us get more in touch with our spiritual side, but in a very, very actionable way, and that's something that we're big on. We hope you will enjoy, and we will talk to you on Sunday.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.